Alright, so this is my second attempt at making this video. I haven't made a video in a couple weeks. The reason why it's my second attempt is because I was attempting to reformat this fucking SSD. It's a 480 gig. And we'll get to that in a second. So this is basically my gaming setup. I've moved this over here and done some cable management, but it still looks like a rat nest of wires. So I have a Wii U, which is backwards compatible with the original Wii games. I have a GameCube. I have an Xbox 360, and that's one of the things I'll be talking about today and why I hate Xbox. And then I have a PS2 and then a slim model PS3, not the super slim, just the original slim. So the PS5 was originally released. Well, not originally released. It was revealed. I'm like half asleep. I've been sleeping all day. It was revealed yesterday, I think it was. I have a hard time remembering dates. The price looks like shit so far. $600-700. I don't really give a fuck. The thing I want to talk about is, well, consoles. I've always been a can't think of the word, fan of consoles over PC gaming because yes, while with PC gaming you do get better frame rates, it is truly backwards compatible. It doesn't matter how long ago the game was made, you could probably run it today. Those things are great. I'm not saying they aren't, but it comes at a serious cost. There used to be a time in computer space where, and this died in gaming long before it did other regions of the industry, where if you bought a piece of software, whether it was, your word processor or game, you physically owned a copy. And around the time disc media came about, they started putting DRM on discs. So you still owned it, but you didn't really own it, if that makes sense. And nowadays, they've gotten rid of discs in the gaming industry, and now you don't own shit. And I've made videos about this on YouTube. Ownership in a Digital Age, one of my earlier videos, where nowadays, if you buy something digitally, with the exception of music off Amazon and ebooks that don't have DRM, you don't actually own what you're buying. What you own is the right to use it so long as it's available. What that basically means is you paid maybe $60 for a game. If there's a licensing dispute or a bunch of fucking people on Twitter decide this is fucking offensive, well, you're out $60 fucking dollars. That's just the reality. And so that's one of the reasons why I've always liked consoles, because yeah, sure, the frame rates aren't as good as PC, but at least I can sit back and enjoy my game. And at least I fucking own my game. Now, the new consoles are coming, PS5 and whatnot, and as I just showed you, I own 5 consoles. But one of the reasons why I never bought Xbox growing up, I owned, a Genesis, Super Nintendo, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Advance SP, DS, the backwards compatible one. I owned a DS Lite, never had a 3DS, never had a 2DS. And I never really bought an Xbox up until recently, actually. And that was because there are some games I want to play on Xbox. And at the end of the day, the Xbox 360 does play games better than the PS3 because the architecture is easy to develop for. The problem I have with Microsoft, and it's the problem I've had with Microsoft since Vista, and why I use Linux. Around the time of Vista, I realized Microsoft was going in a direction that was fucking dog shit. They were attempting to control too much of the industry, which led to them getting sued to hell and back by Netscape, which later became Firefox. they had this 3E policy, embrace, extend, extinguish, which it's very clear they're trying to do with Linux, and it's going to backfire right in their fucking face. Because Linux isn't one of those things they can do that with. It can just easily be forked, so long as the code and there's enough people willing to maintain it. And something tells me Linus Torvalds, creator of Linux, isn't going to let Microsoft just fucking take control. So, more than likely what's going to happen if they try is basically like a macOS type situation, which, for those of you who don't know, macOS is based off, I forget the name for it, which is in turn based off Unix somewhere down the line. There's a whole fucking family tree. And eventually that's going to happen. Linux is in that family tree too. But eventually that's what's going to happen is Microsoft, if they do become a Linux distro, it's going to be a more proprietary version, kind of like how the Unix tree works right now. So you'll still have Linux as it is today, but you'll also have like a proprietary version, which is probably going to be more popular because of Microsoft. But what I really fucking hate about Microsoft, especially with consoles, is hard drives. Now, I actually have not this exact same hard drive, it's a 120 gig version I have on my PS3, but I was able to just buy it, shove it in my PS3, it formatted it, it recognized it, just fine. Nintendo, I've never had to do something like that because Nintendo's never made a console powerful enough where you need to fucking put a hard drive in it. And backwards compatibility isn't like Microsoft, where you have to have a hard drive. You can just put the disc in, and it'll play it off that. Nintendo's just a better manufacturer. You don't need all the fucking storage in the world. And if you do need more storage, I can take any SD card and fucking shove it in my fucking Wii U. So, even that's fucking better than Microsoft, where this is a 480 gig hard drive. I plugged it in, I formatted it, read it just fine. But then it told me I had to make it my main hard drive for the console or some shit. And this is a 480 gig SSD. Sorry if I said hard drive earlier. Fucking internal storage. And when it was done formatting it as my main drive, it only had 32 gigs of storage. So now I have to go through formatting that again, which is what I was doing, which overheated my fucking computer. So naturally I go to this bullshit, the internet, and apparently someone actually answered what I assumed was happening, where the hard drive is only showing up when connected to a transfer cable, or in my case, I bought a USB to SATA, which should fucking work. It worked the first time when I formatted it, but apparently it doesn't do it properly because there's some DRM bullshit. So it looks like I'm gonna have to buy a $13 cable next month, and try again to format this. If I can't format an SSD, I'm not sure what's going to happen with the Series X. Gardner, the Linux gamer, actually touched base on this a while back when the rumors and shit were coming out about the Series X, where Microsoft made a proprietary hard drive, or SSD actually. And this has always been the problem with Microsoft in their consoles, is the original Xbox, yes, ran off-the-shelf parts, but you couldn't just stick any hard drive in it. The Xbox 360 originally had, the top placement thing, which had a hard drive in it, but it was in a proprietary shell. But there's a lot of proprietary bullshit Microsoft does, so you can't just go and buy a fucking SSD or a hard drive and shove it in your console, because why would you be able to save money? And that's kind of the problem where we are. And I actually touched base on this on laptop video, actually, where I talked about laptops. This one right here, where a lot of the time in the laptop space it's cheaper to get the cheapest RAM and storage option and upgrade it yourself, because the storage is cheaper to buy yourself. The hard drives are cheaper to buy yourself. And it seems with consoles, Microsoft wants you to buy their shit. Because of course they do, it makes them more money. But that is typical of Microsoft to be anti-consumer. They've always been anti-consumer. Since Vista, in my opinion. And it really sucks that this is the case, where I can't just buy a fucking $8 fucking cable that should by all means work to format a fucking drive, with the exception that this is USB 3 and my computer has USB 2, and eSATA works fucking faster, but Windows 10 can't recognize eSATA for some reason, which one of the reasons why I'm glad I use Linux. But it just sucks that so much shit is still made only for Windows. And especially in the gaming case, I've seen a lot of third-party controllers where even if you're an Apple person, you would have to use Windows to update the software and shit because they didn't even bother to make an Apple version of the software. There are a rare few things I cannot do with Linux, and that is why I have a hard drive with Windows 10 LTSC 2019, which is an enterprise version. And the reason why I went with that is because, well, like I said, Microsoft fucking sucks. Even Pro now, if you go to the lock screen where you put in your password, there's ads all over it. It's just bombarded with adware and fucking keyloggers and all this bullshit. Unless you get the Enterprise Edition, in which case a lot of that shit's stripped out, but there's still some of it. Which is why I don't like fucking using it as my daily driver. And I don't like using it at all, actually. But at the end of the day, there are some games I want to play for fucking Xbox. But I'm limited, as of right now, because I can't play fucking backwards compatible games because I don't have a fucking hard drive. And I don't have a fucking hard drive in it because I can't fucking properly format this fucking SSD I just bought for $55 fucking dollars, mind you. And this is kind of the shit that's going to continue in the next generation, where you don't literally own shit, where it's going to be harder. Now, the PS5 is rumored to be using an M.2 Gen 4 SSD, so long as you can find something that fits the specs, you should be able to easily replace it. But the PS5 also has an all-digital version, because... And they're doing this. I've noticed it with Nintendo, I've noticed it with movies, where they purposely make the digital versions cheaper, which actually does make sense. You don't have to print a disc or anything like that, or, you know, make the casing or whatnot. But they're doing more than just making it cheaper. They're making it so much cheaper, where it kind of makes you question how they're making a profit. The original Metroid Prime, for example, was on GameCube. They came out with the Wii version called Metroid Prime Trilogy, which is supposed to be coming to the Switch. It's $20 for that game on my Wii U's eShop. When that game came out, it was $60. If I want to buy the game now physically, it's over $100. When it comes out for the Switch, it's most likely going to be fucking $60. If it comes out digitally on the Switch, it's also going to be $60. So why is it that I can buy it for $20? Well, it's because they're trying to get you to buy digital shit. And, you know, Microsoft was doing this with the One when it first came out, and then they had backlash, but now they're doing it again with the Xbox One X SAD, One S AD, all digital. Not the X. Their naming scheme fucking sucks, too. Xbox 360, Xbox, what the fuck kind of naming scheme is that? PlayStation did it better. Or it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Keep it simple. But, like, this is the biggest problem I have with consoles. It's very difficult to find parts to repair it, because it's not like a PC where you can just buy off-the-shelf parts and be done with it. They run proprietary BIOSes, they run proprietary operating systems. And at the end of the day, yeah, it's worth putting up with that shit to an extent, because what you're paying for you actually own. Where it becomes an inconvenience, though, is when you have to do shit like Microsoft's Xbox 360, where you have to buy certain proprietary bullshit to even get it to fucking work. And I'm not expecting that to change with the Xbox Series X. I'm just not. Am I going to buy it? Probably. Because it's backwards compatible and I don't feel like buying more consoles than I need. And this is kind of where we're at, where I really kind of hate the way the industry is, where the GameCube came out. When did HDMI cables come onto the scene? Bear with me for a second. It doesn't say. I feel like it was about the time I was in high school, so maybe 2003, 2004. So, if you're making products, there's no way you wouldn't have known that was going to launch. And what really sucks is the Xbox 360 came out at the time of the Wii. The Xbox 360 didn't have an HDMI port until the Slim, or the second model, I forget which one. When it launched, originally it didn't have an HDMI port. Not the Xbox, PlayStation 3 did. The Wii didn't. And what really kills me about Nintendo is the GameCube originally, the one I have that I just bought an $80 fucking adapter for, from Insurrection Industries, had a digital port. They didn't properly sell the component cables, so now they're worth fucking like $300, which isn't worth buying. They could have looked toward the future and made an HDMI cable or something for it. They didn't fucking do that. The software needed for the GameCube Game Boy player wasn't as good as some of the third-party options that have come out now. And it's little things like that that kill me about Nintendo. And then they made the Wii, and it was backwards compatible, and it was great. And then they made a non-backwards compatible version, which was bullshit. Excuse me. And then they made the Wii U. Now, the Wii U could have easily been backwards compatible all the way to the GameCube. You didn't have to put a lot of the hardware that was in the original Wii. They made a USB to GameCube controller adapter. They already have software for digital memory cards in their emulation. They could have done that just like the PlayStation 3 did for the PS1 games. They could have made a new Game Boy player that also plays DS and 3DS games. Nintendo didn't think to do any of this with the Wii U, or market it properly for that matter, and so it was a massive fucking failure. And the PS2 was backwards compatible with the PS1, the original PS3 was backwards compatible with everything, the Slim model I have is only backwards compatible with the PS1 games. So, the problem I'm going to have with the PS5 is, yes, it's backwards compatible with the PS4, we know that, but how are the rumors of it being more backwards compatible true? And I don't think they are, and it's bullshit because this is Sony. They make the console, they make the operating system, they make the BIOS. There's no way in hell with projects like PS3 emulators that are doing very well that Sony couldn't do that properly. They already have an emulator that can play PS1 games. I have it built into the operating system by default because it came with it on my PS3 Slim. I can take any PS1 game and play it on my PS3. The original PS3 was backwards compatible because it had hardware in it. Later fat models had emulation. Granted, it wasn't as good, but they could have improved upon that. It would take nothing but money and time, which Sony definitely fucking has, to put people in development and improve what they already have laying around and release a truly backward compatible through emulation type thing like You know that thing, the Retron 5, where it has like multiple fucking cartridges, but it's all emulation, but it's shit emulation. Sony could do something like that, and it would actually be good because it's fucking Sony. It's their software and hardware. If anyone could make it good, it would be them. Um, but this isn't where we're going. And the problem is, with the original Xbox, they put shit capacitors on it. So it's not even worth buying an original Xbox anymore because of that, because you'd have to replace all the capacitors. Um, and the backwards compatibility, the way the Xbox does it, is fucking shit. And at the end of the day, I don't want to move to PC because I like owning my games. And I'm starting to lose my fucking voice. Ugh. Um, I like physically owning shit that I buy, and I don't want to worry about if someone's gonna get offended by this, is it gonna get removed, and am I gonna be out of fucking money? I don't like worrying about that, and that's why I'll continue to support consoles. But at some point in time, it's really not going to be worth it to play games at all, because we are moving to an all digital future on the console side, and they are using the PC as an excuse. And it's going to come to the point where, especially nowadays, where things are getting fucking canceled by assholes on Twitter, where you're never going to be sure whether the game you own you will be able to play for years on end, because you never know if tomorrow it's going to be gone, and the money you spent on it is going to be fucking poof, it's going to vanish, because you already paid the money. They're not going to give it back to you. Refund policy's out the fucking window at that point. And the even worse part is places like GameStop, which had shit management, which is one of the reasons why they're failing, are gonna go. And so now the only place really I buy used games anymore is eBay anyways, but it's gonna be harder to play games in the future is what I'm saying. And the PS5, as great as the games look, as great as Sony is at making systems, I don't give a fuck what the system looks like, honestly. But I'm just not sure I can continue to support this shit. Especially with the Series X. I already know down the line somewhere I'll probably get a PS5, but I'm not sure if I want to get an Xbox One X or Series X, because there was never really that big of an incentive for me to buy any Xbox console. There were maybe a couple games I wanted to play, but I could play most of the games I wanted because they were third party on other systems. But if this is what I'm going to have to put up with, where we're getting to the point with the Series X where I wouldn't even be able to buy an internal hard drive and just shove it in, or an M.2 and shove it in, I'm not sure if I'm going to buy that. And if owning an Xbox 360 has taught me anything, it's when it comes to consoles, yeah, it's not easy to find parts. But at least with the GameCube, I could take a small PC fan and a 3D printed part and put that in. With the PS2, I'll have to cut the wire and solder a fucking connector to it and replace the fan that way. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the PS3 because I can't even find a fucking controller for it, because they're all fucking counterfeit. But at least there's some repairability on these consoles. When you do shit like Microsoft does, where, yeah, you can take it apart and repair it, but you can't do shit to, like, fucking format a drive without proprietary bullshit. That kind of puts a sour taste in your mouth. And, well, yes, I've managed to play some games, because I can't find it. I have a flash drive, and I've just been using that. The disk drive is shit on the E, by the way. It makes too much fucking noise, and it seems, conspiracy theory coming on, but it seems to me that they purposely made the disk drive like shit, so that way you'll download the games and use the disk as a key of sorts, so a verification key. And it's shit like this that I just don't like in the game space, but at the end of the day, I just bought Bully, I bought Tekken, Street Fighter Cross Tekken, and I've really enjoyed these games. But I also own Grabbed by the Ghoulies, and I can't even fucking play that because I can't get the hard drive to fucking work. And it's gonna be another month before I can get that to work now because I don't have the fucking money this month. And I just don't fucking know anymore. I honestly can't, in good faith, support PC gaming despite the better frame rates and shit, because you don't truly own what you buy. Now there are some exceptions I've mentioned, like GOG and whatnot, but for the most part, like the really good games that I would buy for consoles that are available on PC, they're all proprietary. And if they ever get taken down or the servers die, you are fucked. And I think where I'm headed anyways is I'm hoping emulation gets to the point where it's good enough where every game I own can be played on an emulator on a PC. In which case, I'll continue to buy games, find a way to make an ISO, or I'll just start pirating shit again. There are cases for piracy. I'm not going to say there isn't, but this is the mindset I'm heading in because of the way the industry is, where there's really not a clear path to enjoyment anymore in terms of gaming, because there's just so much bullshit you have to deal with. I am going to get a Switch at a later date, but with the Joy-Con issue and shit, I'll probably buy a third-party controller. It's just little fucking things in the industry, man. And there's... It is really a trade-off. On one hand, you go console, and yes, you own what you physically buy, but it's harder to fix or repair or replace shit, which, if you're good with your hands like I am, where it's not that big a deal to take something apart and fix it, it's really not something you worry about, but it is a pain in the ass. Where on the other hand, on the PC side, you get much better frame rates, you get much better graphics, but you don't own the fucking games. So that's kind of where we are in the trade-off space, versus console or PC. And I would argue putting up with the bullshit on console side is much better if you actually own what you pay for. There was a case a while back where, I'm going to end this video soon, where Lego Lord of the Rings was taken down digitally even though people had bought it and people were out of money. But you could just go buy that game for PS3. And that's kind of why I still advocate, that was the word I was looking for, advocate, consoles or PC. Because yeah, sure, the frame rates, can't stress enough, aren't as good. The graphics probably aren't as good as PC. But at least you own it. And where I draw the line is spending money on shit I don't actually own. And if there's not a way to remove the DRM, and which probably violates something there in terms of service, I couldn't give a shit, I'm not buying it. And that's the only reason why I buy digital books, is because there is a way to remove the DRM and physically own what I buy. There's no such thing for digital movies or digital games. If I want digital movies, I can take my Blu-rays and DVDs and whip them onto my computer. Digital music, I can buy DRM-free shit right off Amazon. Gaming's that space, man, where you're fucked either way. You really are, and it's just getting worse. And that's where I'm going to end this video today. And it's just something to think about. Anyways, I got a new 55-inch television. I'm going to go back to watching TV. Maybe play some games later. I'll do another review of some of the shit I bought and talk about it in the next video. I'll try to do it later this week. See you guys in the next video.